A millionaire attends a theater play and sees a 9-year-old girl who looks exactly like his missing daughter. Before we dive into the story, drop a comment below and tell us where you're watching from. Enjoy the story. The Thornwood Gallery was hidden between a high-end boutique and an antique bookstore, the kind of artistic corner that Maxwell Reed usually walked past without a second glance. Tonight, however, he stood there in his perfectly tailored charcoal suit, platinum cufflinks catching the overhead lights, his normally confident posture slightly tense. "You need this," his friend Victor had insisted. "Some fresh air. Unknown faces, overpriced canapes, something that might actually stir that frozen heart of yours." Maxwell had given him a sidelong glance. "I wasn't aware my heart had a temperature setting." "Well, if it does, it's somewhere between corporate handshake and funeral buffet." Inside, the gallery was softly lit, a hushed but not stifled crowd of young artists and well-heeled patrons examining the photographs that adorned the cream-colored walls. Maxwell moved slowly, letting his gaze drift across the framed images. Urban streetscapes, portraits in shadow, abstract textures, none of which held his attention for more than a moment. Then he saw it. A small, weather-beaten cottage perched on the edge of a cliff overlooking the sea. Wild grass surrounding it bending toward the land in the wind. The photograph was taken at dusk, the horizon tinged with gold and gray. It wasn't dramatic. If anything, it was remarkably still. But Maxwell stopped in his tracks. Victor noticed. "Finally found one you like?" Maxwell didn't answer. He stepped closer. It was the same cottage he hadn't seen in more than 10 years, but he could have drawn it from memory. The slope of the roof, the rough boards patched with metal in places, the crooked chimney. He knew that coastline. He remembered the salt in the air, the silence, the way Catherine would fall asleep against his shoulder with Lily curled between them. He moved down the wall. Another photograph, a waist-high meadow with wildflowers surrounded by a broken fence. And then a riverbank with an old wooden bench half sunk into the soil. Each image struck him like a knock on a long-closed door. These weren't public places. These weren't landmarks anyone would recognize from a travel guide. These were private, hidden places. They weren't just Catherine's. They weren't just his. They were Lily's, too. "Do you like that one?" A soft voice beside him broke the silence. Maxwell turned slightly. A young man with tousled dark hair stood a few feet away, hands stuffed into the pockets of a slightly rumpled blazer. He couldn't have been more than 25. "I know this place," Maxwell said, nodding to the photograph of the cottage. "I know all of these places." The young man's expression shifted from polite interest to cautious curiosity. "You do? That's unexpected. These locations aren't exactly popular tourist spots." "No," Maxwell agreed, his voice suddenly tight. "They're not. They're quite private, actually." He turned to face the young photographer fully. "How did you find them?" The young man hesitated, rocking slightly on his heels. "They were my guardian's places. Hannah Parker. She kept journals about them, made sketches. Some were quite vague, but I managed to track them all down." He extended his hand. "I'm Benjamin, by the way. Benjamin Parker." Maxwell shook his hand automatically, but his mind was racing. Hannah Parker. The name meant nothing to him. Hannah wrote about these places. Benjamin nodded. "All the time. She said they were part of a bigger picture, that maybe someday they'd mean something to someone else." He paused. "She always said they were clues, not just for me, but for—" He was interrupted by a small commotion near the entrance. A woman with light brown hair had entered, holding the hand of a little girl about 9 years old. The child wore a blue dress with white trim, her dark hair falling in gentle waves around a heart-shaped face. Maxwell's heart stopped. The little girl's eyes, large, curious, and the exact shade of hazel that had once looked up at him every morning, scanned the room with interest. When she smiled at something the woman whispered to her, a small dimple appeared in her left cheek. "Just like Lily's." "That's Hannah," Benjamin said, following Maxwell's gaze. "And my little sister, Abigail." But Maxwell barely heard him. The room seemed to tilt beneath his feet as he stared at the child who was, impossibly, the mirror image of his daughter, his Lily, who had vanished without a trace 10 years ago when she was just this age. "Are you all right, sir?" Benjamin asked, concern edging into his voice. Maxwell couldn't answer. His carefully constructed world, the one he'd rebuilt after losing everything that mattered, was crumbling around him. Because either he was losing his mind, or the child standing across the gallery was the daughter he had been told was gone forever. Maxwell couldn't sleep that night. He poured himself a glass of whiskey he never finished, stared out the window longer than intended, then sat in the armchair by the fireplace long after the flames had died. There was nothing specific he could pinpoint, no single line Benjamin had said, no image that had broken through. It was everything, the quiet certainty in the young man's voice, the photographs, and most of all that child. Abigail. With Lily's eyes, Lily's smile. The following afternoon he found himself in line at a coffee shop called the Bean and Brew. The counter girl wore a shirt that said, "Extra oat milk is not a personality," in bright pink letters. Maxwell wasn't sure what kind of milk he ordered, something called a flat white because it sounded the least ridiculous, and waited near the door, trying not to look like a man who didn't belong. Hannah Parker arrived 2 minutes late, apologizing with a soft smile. She had the same light brown hair he'd seen at the gallery, now pulled back in a simple ponytail. She moved with a cautious grace, like someone accustomed to navigating uncertain terrain. Benjamin said, "You recognized some of the places in his photographs," she said after they'd settled at a corner table. "That's remarkable. Most people just see landscapes." Maxwell nodded, studying her face for any sign of recognition. "They're quite personal places. Places I visited with my family." Hannah tilted her head slightly. "Your family?" "My wife Catherine and our daughter Lily," Maxwell said, watching her carefully. "Catherine passed away when Lily was very young, and then Lily disappeared 10 years ago." Hannah's hand, which had been reaching for her cup, froze mid-air. "Disappeared?" "There was an accident at our summer home," Maxwell said, the familiar lie sliding from his lips with practiced ease, the story he'd been told to tell. "She was never found." Hannah's eyes, warm and perceptive, studied him for a long moment. "Mr. Reed, Maxwell," he corrected, suddenly needing the intimacy of first names. "Maxwell," she continued. "I'm not sure what you're looking for, but Benjamin's photographs are just landscapes he found based on my old journals. Nothing more." "And Abigail?" The name felt strange on his tongue. Wrong, somehow. Hannah's posture stiffened. "What about her?" "She looks exactly like my daughter." The silence between them stretched, taut and fragile. "That's not possible," Hannah finally said, but her voice had lost its certainty. "I think it is," Maxwell replied, leaning forward. "I think we need to talk about where Abigail came from, and why you've been photographing the exact places where I took my daughter before she vanished. I was given Abigail when she was just a baby," Hannah said, her fingers nervously tracing the rim of her coffee cup. "I was told her parents had died in an accident. There was money involved, enough to care for her, to keep moving when instructed." Maxwell leaned forward. "Instructed by whom?" "I never knew her name. Just a voice on the phone, a woman who sounded educated, refined. She would call every few months with new instructions." Hannah hesitated. "And sometimes with stories about places. I should visit with Abigail, special places." Maxwell's jaw tightened. He knew exactly who that voice belonged to. "May I see her again?" "Abigail?" Hannah's protective instinct flashed across her face. "Why?" "Because either I'm losing my mind, or she's my daughter." The park was quiet that afternoon. Maxwell sat on a bench watching as Abigail fed ducks at the pond's edge. Hannah stood nearby, vigilant as a sentinel. "She loves animals," Hannah said softly. "Always has. Especially birds." Just like Lily, Maxwell thought, remembering how his daughter would spend hours with the nesting herons near their summer cottage. "Does she remember anything? From before?" Hannah shook her head. "She was too young. Though sometimes, she paused. Sometimes she draws things she couldn't possibly know. A lighthouse on a specific cliff, a room with a window seat and yellow curtains. Maxwell's heart constricted. Lily's bedroom at their summer home had yellow curtains that Catherine had sewn herself. "I'd like to show you something," he said, pulling out his phone. He scrolled to a photo he kept hidden in a protected folder. Lily at her 5th birthday, the last one before she vanished. He held it out to Hannah. Her sharp intake of breath confirmed what he already knew. "This is impossible," she whispered. "Is it?" Maxwell asked. "Or is it exactly what was meant to happen? You keeping journals, Benjamin finding those places, the photographs being exhibited precisely where I would see them." Hannah was silent for a long moment. "What are you suggesting?" "That someone wanted me to find her. After all this time." As Abigail ran toward them, laughing about something she'd seen, Maxwell felt a certainty settle over him. This child, with her hazel eyes, her left cheek dimple, her way of tilting her head when curious, was Lily. His Lily. But certainty brought fear. If she had been taken from him, hidden all these years, then whoever had orchestrated it would not simply let her go. Someone powerful enough to make a child disappear, to create a new identity, to manipulate people across years and miles. Someone like his former mother-in-law, Senator Elizabeth Winters. "Hannah," he said quietly as Abigail approached, "I need to know everything. Every place you were told to visit, every story you were told to tell, because I think we're all in danger now." "These came every 6 months," Hannah said, spreading a collection of sealed envelopes across Maxwell's dining room table. Each bore only her name, typed rather than handwritten, with different postmarks from across the country. Maxwell examined them carefully. And inside? Instructions. Money. Sometimes photographs of places with notes about why Abigail should see them. Hannah pushed a faded Polaroid forward. "Like this lighthouse. The note said she loved watching the boats from here." Maxwell's breath caught. It was the lighthouse near their summer home, where Lily would sit for hours with her small binoculars. "She knew everything about you," Hannah continued. "Where you'd go, what Lily loved. It was like following a script written by someone who'd watched your every move." "Elizabeth," Maxwell said, the name bitter on his tongue. "Catherine's mother. Never approved of me. When Catherine died during childbirth with our second daughter," his voice caught. "Elizabeth blamed me, said I should have insisted on better medical care." Hannah's eyes widened. "Second daughter?" "The baby didn't survive either. At least, that's what I was told." Maxwell ran a hand through his silver-streaked hair. "Now I wonder if that was another lie." The sound of laughter drifted in from the living room where Benjamin was showing Abigail how to use his camera. The normalcy of it felt surreal against the conspiracy they were unraveling. "How did you become involved in this?" Maxwell asked. Hannah's eyes clouded with memory. "I was a nurse at St. Clair's Hospital. There was a patient, a young woman who died after giving birth to twin girls." She looked up, meeting Maxwell's gaze. "One of the babies allegedly didn't survive. The implication hung in the air between them. I was approached afterward," Hannah continued. "Offered a significant amount of money to leave my job and care for one of the surviving twins. I was told the father was unfit, dangerous even." "And you believed that?" "I was young," Hannah said defensively. "The woman who approached me was convincing, respected, powerful. She said the child would be in danger otherwise." "Senator Elizabeth Winters," Maxwell supplied. "Catherine's mother." Hannah nodded slowly. "I never knew her name, but she had this way of speaking. Like every word was carefully chosen." Maxwell stood abruptly, pacing the length of the room. "She took my daughters, both of them, and made me believe they were dead." His voice was low, dangerous. "Where is the other child, Hannah? Where is Lily's twin?" "I don't know," Hannah whispered. "I was only given Abigail." The realization hit Maxwell like a physical blow. If Abigail was here, where was his other daughter? Still with Elizabeth? Had she been keeping both children all these years, separated, each unaware of the other's existence? "We need help," he said, reaching for his phone. "Someone who isn't connected to any of this." As he dialed, Maxwell watched Abigail through the doorway, her small hands carefully holding Benjamin's camera, her face alight with concentration. His daughter, one of his daughters, alive and whole. "Sam," he said when the call connected, "I need your help. It's about Lily. She's alive." Sam Collins arrived the next morning, his weathered face serious beneath salt and pepper hair. A former detective turned private investigator, he'd been the only one who hadn't given up the search for Lily all those years ago. "I'll be damned," he murmured, watching Abigail through the kitchen doorway. "It's like seeing a ghost." "A ghost who loves chocolate chip pancakes and can't tie her shoelaces properly," Maxwell replied, his voice softening. Sam turned to Hannah. "You never suspected?" "There were moments," she admitted. "Things she'd say or do that seemed, remembered rather, than learned. But I convinced myself I was imagining things." Sam nodded, then spread a map across the table. "Show me everywhere you've been instructed to take her." Hannah traced a pattern of locations: the lighthouse, the cottage, a small bookstore in Maine, a garden with a hidden statue. All places from Maxwell and Catherine's early life together. All places where Lily had been happy. "It's like a twisted memory tour," Sam observed. "But why? What was Elizabeth trying to accomplish?" Maxwell stared at the map. "Control. She's always been obsessed with legacy, with shaping the next generation of Winter's women to her specifications. When Catherine defied her by marrying me, she lost that control. So she took your daughters to start over," Sam concluded. The plan came together quickly. Maxwell and Hannah would take Abigail to the summer cottage, the one in Benjamin's photograph, while Sam would begin discreetly investigating Elizabeth's private properties. The drive to the coast was quiet. Abigail dozing in the back seat, Hannah watching the passing landscape with apprehension. "What if we're wrong?" she finally asked. Maxwell kept his eyes on the road. "We're not." The cottage appeared exactly as it had in the photograph. Weathered, listing slightly toward the sea, windows reflecting the late afternoon sun. Maxwell felt a rush of memories as he unlocked the door with a key he'd kept all these years. Inside, everything was covered in dust sheets, preserved like a museum to a lost life. He moved through the rooms slowly, trailing his fingers over familiar surfaces while Hannah helped Abigail explore. In what had been Lily's room, Abigail stopped suddenly, staring at a small wooden dresser. "The treasure box is in the bottom drawer," she said matter-of-factly. Maxwell froze. "What did you say?" Abigail looked confused by his reaction. "The box, with the bird carved on top. It's secret." Hannah's eyes met Maxwell's over Abigail's head. There was no way Abigail could know about the jewelry box he'd made for Lily, hidden in that exact drawer, unless she remembered. With trembling hands, Maxwell pulled open the drawer. There it was, the small maple box with a hummingbird carved into its lid, exactly where Lily had always kept it. "May I?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Abigail nodded solemnly. Inside were Lily's treasures: a smooth stone from the beach, a pressed wildflower, a small silver locket with Catherine's picture. But beneath these familiar items was something new. A folded piece of paper with recent handwriting. Maxwell unfolded it carefully. In neat, elegant script were the words, "Remember who you are, little hummingbird. I'm watching over you always." It was dated just 6 months ago. "Someone's been here," Hannah whispered, her face pale. "Not someone," Maxwell said, the paper shaking in his hand. "Lily, my other daughter. She's been leaving messages for her sister." The discovery in the cottage changed everything. If Lily had been there recently, leaving messages for a sister she couldn't possibly have known existed, then she wasn't simply being held captive. She was aware, planning, perhaps even trying to orchestrate her own rescue. She must have access to the cottage periodically, Maxwell said as they drove back to the city, Abigail asleep again in the back seat. Elizabeth would never suspect the significance of these places to me. She always dismissed my influence on Lily's early years. Hannah was silent for a long moment. What if Lily, the real Lily, knows more than we do? What if she's been orchestrating all of this? Maxwell considered this as streetlights flashed across his face. A 17-year-old girl, orchestrating an elaborate plan to reunite with a father she barely remembers and a twin she never knew? Stranger things have happened, Hannah murmured. When they returned to Maxwell's apartment, Sam was waiting with news. Elizabeth owns a property in North Haven, Maine, he said quietly after Abigail had been tucked into bed. Very private, heavily secured. Local records show regular deliveries of food, clothing, medical supplies. Medical supplies? Hannah asked. Sam nodded grimly. Including prescription medications for a teenage girl? Maxwell's heart raced. That's where she is. That's where Elizabeth's keeping Lily. We can't just storm the place, Sam cautioned. Elizabeth Winters is a U.S. senator with powerful connections. One call from her, and we'd all be facing charges. What do you suggest? Maxwell demanded, frustration edging his voice. We need irrefutable proof that Lily is your daughter and is being held against her will. DNA testing for Abigail would be a start. Hannah tensed visibly. You want to take a DNA sample from Abigail? It would legally establish what we already know, Maxwell said gently, and give us grounds to search for her sister. Hannah's protective instincts warred with the truth before them. Finally, she nodded. All right, but I want to be the one to explain it to her. Later that night, after arrangements had been made for discreet testing, Maxwell found Hannah standing at the window watching the city lights. Thank you, he said simply. Hannah didn't turn. I've raised her for 9 years, loved her as my own. I'm not sure I know who I am without her. Maxwell moved to stand beside her. You're the woman who protected my daughter when I couldn't. Who gave her a loving home when she was stolen from hers. Whatever happens next, you will always be essential to her life, to both their lives. Hannah's eyes glistened in the dim light. Do you think she'll forgive me? For not knowing, for not questioning enough? There's nothing to forgive, Maxwell assured her. You were manipulated by a woman who's made a career of manipulating others. A soft sound from the doorway made them turn. Abigail stood there in her pajamas, clutching the wooden box from the cottage. I remember, she whispered, her small voice trembling. Not everything, but pieces. The cottage, the lighthouse. Her eyes found Maxwell's. You used to call me Lilybird. Maxwell dropped to one knee, his heart in his throat. Yes, he managed. Yes, I did. The DNA results arrived 3 days later, confirming what they already knew. Abigail was indeed Maxwell's biological daughter. Sam wasted no time filing emergency motions with a sympathetic judge, one whose career predated Elizabeth's influence. We've got limited search authorization for the North Haven property, Sam explained, spreading blueprints across Maxwell's dining room table. Officially, we're looking for evidence of identity fraud and kidnapping. Unofficially, we're finding Lily, Maxwell finished, studying the layout of the secluded estate. Hannah entered with a tray of coffee. Abigail's finally asleep. She's been having more memories. Fragments, really. She remembered a room with blue wallpaper and sailboats. Her nursery at our main house, Maxwell said softly. Catherine decorated it herself. Sam cleared his throat. There's something else you should know. I've been tracking Elizabeth's movements. She left Washington yesterday heading north. If she's not already at the North Haven property, she will be soon. She knows, Hannah whispered. Somehow she knows we've found Abigail. Then we move tonight, Maxwell decided, before she can relocate Lily. As they finalized details, Maxwell's phone rang, an unknown number. He answered cautiously, Mr. Reed. The voice was cold, cultured, instantly recognizable. I thought we had an understanding. Maxwell's grip tightened on the phone. Elizabeth, you were to stay away from my granddaughters. That was our arrangement. Your arrangement, Maxwell corrected, signaling frantically to Sam, who immediately began trying to trace the call. You stole my daughters and made me believe they were dead. I protected them from your influence, Elizabeth countered smoothly. Catherine would have wanted them raised properly with advantages you could never provide. Catherine loved me, Maxwell said through clenched teeth. She chose me, something you never could accept. A cold laugh came through the line. Love is a luxury, Maxwell. Power and legacy are what endure. My granddaughters were born to continue the Winters legacy, not to disappear into your mundane world. They're my daughters, not your political pawns. They're my blood, Elizabeth hissed, her composure slipping slightly. The only part of Catherine I have left. I won't let you take them. You've already lost Abigail, Maxwell said. And I'm coming for Lily. The line went silent for a moment. You have no idea what you're up against, Elizabeth finally said, her voice deadly calm. By the time you reach North Haven, we'll be gone, and this time you'll never find us. The call disconnected. Sam shook his head. Not enough time to complete the trace. We need to go. Now, Maxwell urged. Within an hour, they were in Sam's SUV heading north, leaving Benjamin to watch over Abigail. Hannah insisted on coming, arguing that Lily might need a familiar female presence after years of isolation. As they drove through the night, Maxwell stared out at the darkness, remembering the day Lily was born, how small she had been, how fiercely he had loved her instantly. The thought that there had been two of them, both taken from him, filled him with equal parts rage and determination. We're coming, Lily, he whispered to the glass. We're finally coming. The North Haven property emerged from the morning mist, like something from another century, a sprawling stone mansion set back from the rocky shore surrounded by towering pines. Iron gates and security cameras marked the perimeter. Subtle, Sam muttered, parking their vehicle in a concealed spot half a mile down the road. I've seen federal facilities with less security. How do we get past all that? Hannah asked, eyeing the gates nervously. Sam pulled out a folder. Judge's order gives us legal access, but I'd bet Elizabeth's security has instructions to delay us regardless. He checked his watch. Local sheriff should be meeting us in 10 minutes to enforce the order. The wait was excruciating for Maxwell. Every minute increased the possibility that Elizabeth had already fled with Lily. He paced the narrow shoulder of the road, scanning the property through breaks in the trees. When the sheriff finally arrived, a stern-faced woman with practical eyes, they approached the main gate. As expected, the security team attempted to stall, claiming the senator wasn't in residence. This order authorizes immediate search of the premises regardless of who is or isn't present, the sheriff stated firmly. Open the gate or I'll have. It opened. Inside, the mansion was eerily quiet, expensively furnished but feeling more like a museum than a home. Maxwell noted there were no personal photographs, no signs of a teenager's presence. Split up, Sam directed. Sheriff, take the east wing. Hannah, check the kitchen and staff quarters. Maxwell and I will take the west wing. Maxwell moved through the house with growing desperation, opening doors to find empty rooms or impersonal guest suites. Then, at the end of a long corridor, he found a locked door. Here, he called to Sam, who produced a small toolkit and made quick work of the lock. The room beyond was startlingly different from the rest of the house. Walls painted a soft blue, bookshelves filled with volumes of poetry and science, desk covered with notebooks. A teenage girl's room, but with an odd absence of technology. No computer, no phone, no television. She's been here, Maxwell whispered, picking up a notebook. Inside were pages of elegant handwriting, poetry, sketches of familiar places. The lighthouse, the cottage, the meadow. The same places from Benjamin's photographs. A soft noise from behind a connecting door made them both freeze. Sam drew his gun, nodding for Maxwell to step back. Instead, Maxwell moved forward, gently turning the handle. The bathroom beyond was empty, but the window was open, curtains billowing in the breeze. She was just here, Maxwell said urgently. She heard us coming and fled. They rushed back through the house and out onto the grounds. Hannah joined them, shaking her head. No sign of anyone in her search areas either. There. Sam pointed toward the tree line, where a flash of movement had disturbed the underbrush. Maxwell took off running, heart pounding. The figure ahead was slight, moving with the certainty of someone who knew these woods well. "Lily!" he called out. "Lily, please! It's Dad!" The figure faltered, nearly stumbling, then resumed running with renewed urgency. Maxwell pushed himself harder, closing the gap. "Catherine's music box," he shouted desperately. "The one that played her lullaby. You kept it by your bed every night. You said it helped the nightmares stay away." This time the figure stopped completely. Slowly she turned. Standing before him was a girl on the cusp of womanhood, with Catherine's delicate features and his own determined jaw. Her dark hair was pulled back in a practical ponytail, her clothes expensive but conservative. Her eyes, Lily's eyes, were wide with disbelief and something like hope. "Dad?" she whispered, the word fragile between them. "Is it really you?" Lily asked, her voice barely audible above the rustling leaves. She stood perfectly still, as if afraid any movement might shatter the moment. Maxwell nodded, unable to speak, past the knot in his throat. 10 years of grief and searching compressed into this single moment. "She said you didn't want me anymore." Lily continued, her words tumbling out. "That after Mom died, you couldn't bear to look at me. That you'd signed away your rights. I never," Maxwell managed. "I never stopped looking for you. She told me you were dead." Lily's composure cracked then, tears spilling down her cheeks. "I knew she was lying. I always knew." Maxwell closed the distance between them, pulling her into his arms. She was tall, for 17, but still fit against his chest the way she had as a child. He felt her tears soaking through his shirt, her shoulders shaking with silent sobs. "We have to go," he said gently, pulling back to look at her. "Your grandmother will return soon." Lily tensed. "She's already here. She arrived last night, started packing, said we were leaving for Europe. I pretended to go along with it, but I've been hiding in the woods since dawn." Her eyes darted nervously toward the house. "She has people everywhere, Dad. Security, staff. They all report to her." Sam and Hannah approached cautiously, staying a few yards back to give them space. "Lily," Maxwell said gently, "this is Sam Collins. He's been helping me search for you. And this is Hannah Parker." Recognition flickered across Lily's face. "Parker. Like Benjamin Parker, the photographer?" Hannah nodded, surprised. "You know Benjamin?" "Not personally," Lily admitted. "But I followed his work online whenever I could sneak computer access. The places he photographs. I knew someone was trying to send me a message." "Someone was," Maxwell confirmed. "But we need to talk somewhere safe. There's so much you don't know yet." A sharp crack echoed through the trees, a branch breaking underfoot. Lily stiffened. "Grandmother's security," she whispered. "We need to go now." They moved quickly through the woods, following Lily's lead along a path she clearly knew well. She guided them to a small boathouse hidden behind a stand of pines. "There's a boat," she explained, fumbling with the padlock. "I've been planning this for months. Supplies, money I've saved from my allowance." Sam stepped forward. "Allow me." He made quick work of the lock with tools from his pocket. Inside was a small motorboat, nothing fancy but seaworthy. Lily moved with practiced efficiency, checking the fuel levels and untying the mooring lines. "You know how to operate this?" Maxwell asked, impressed. A hint of a smile crossed Lily's face. "Grandmother insisted I learn appropriate leisure activities. Boating qualified. Ironic that it's helping me escape her." As they prepared to depart, a voice rang out from the tree line. "Lillian, Elizabeth Winters, stop this childish behavior immediately." Senator Elizabeth Winters emerged from the trees, her silver hair immaculate, her posture rigid with authority. 2 security men flanked her, hands hovering near concealed weapons. "My name," the girl said clearly, standing taller, "is Lily Catherine Reed." and I'm going home with my father. Elizabeth's face hardened. You ungrateful child. After everything I've provided, the best education, culture, opportunities, you would throw it all away for this man who couldn't protect his own family. You're the one who took me from my family, Lily shot back. Elizabeth turned her cold gaze to Maxwell. This isn't over. I have resources you can't imagine. Connections you'll never overcome. What I have, Maxwell replied evenly, is the truth. And a second daughter you didn't know I'd found. For the first time, Elizabeth's composure faltered. You're lying. Abigail is safe with Benjamin, Hannah stated firmly. And we have DNA confirmation that she is Maxwell's child and Lily's twin sister. Elizabeth's face drained of color. That's impossible. The second child died at birth. Another lie, Maxwell said, his voice steady despite the rage boiling inside him. You took both my daughters and separated them. Did you think I'd never discover the truth? The security men exchanged uncertain glances, clearly not briefed on this development. Elizabeth recovered quickly, her political training taking over. These are outrageous accusations. Lillian has been in my custody legally since her father abandoned her after my daughter's death. Whatever scheme you're perpetrating, save it for the press, Senator, Sam interrupted, holding up his phone. I've been recording since we arrived, and I've already sent the coordinates of this location to the FBI agent handling our kidnapping case. A flash of genuine fear crossed Elizabeth's face before her mask of control returned. She turned to Lily, her voice softening to a manipulative purr. Darling, these people are manipulating you. Think about your future. Harvard in the fall, the internship I arranged with the Supreme Court. Would your father have provided those opportunities? Lily didn't waver. You kept me prisoner for 10 years, told me my father didn't want me, made me believe I was alone in the world except for you. Her voice broke slightly. And all this time I had a sister. A twin sister, Hannah added quietly, who has been remembering you bit by bit. Lily's eyes widened. The dreams, she whispered. I've been dreaming about another girl who looked like me. I thought it was just imagination. Elizabeth made a sudden move toward Lily, but Maxwell stepped between them. It's over, Elizabeth. The legal documents are already filed. The DNA tests are conclusive. Your political career won't survive this scandal. You have no idea who you're threatening, Elizabeth hissed, her veneer cracking completely. One call and I can ensure you never see either of those girls again. Sam's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, then smiled grimly. That won't be possible, Senator. The FBI just arrived at your main gate, and they have a federal warrant that trumps our local one. As if on cue, they heard vehicles approaching and voices calling through the woods. Elizabeth straightened her jacket, a lifetime of political calculation evident in her eyes. This isn't over, Maxwell. Not by a long shot. She turned and walked toward the approaching authorities, already composing her face into a mask of dignified concern. Will she get away with it? Lily asked quietly, watching her grandmother disappear among the trees. No, Maxwell promised. Not this time. They returned to Maxwell's apartment that evening, the reunions bittersweet and overwhelming. Abigail approached her older sister with shy curiosity, while Lily seemed unable to stop staring at the girl who shared her face, her history. I used to imagine you, Abigail confessed as they sat together on the living room sofa. Even before I started, remembering I'd talked to you in my head. Lily nodded, tears shimmering in her eyes. Me too, especially at night when I felt most alone. Maxwell watched from the doorway, his heart full beyond measure. Hannah stood beside him, her own eyes damp. Thank you, he said simply, for keeping Abigail safe, for helping bring Lily home. Hannah smiled sadly. I was part of the deception, even if unwittingly. You were another victim of Elizabeth's manipulation, Maxwell corrected gently. And now you're part of our path forward. As night fell, the apartment finally quiet, Maxwell sat alone in his study, staring at a photograph of Catherine. We found them, he whispered to her image. Both of them. They're home. The news broke like a summer storm, fast, furious, and unavoidable. By morning, every major network was running the story. Senator's secret scandal. Elizabeth Winters accused of kidnapping granddaughters. Maxwell shut off the television, turning to where Sam sat reviewing legal documents at the dining table. How bad will it get? Maxwell asked. Worse before it gets better, Sam replied honestly. Elizabeth's already spinning this as a misunderstanding, claiming she was protecting the girls from your unstable grief after Catherine's death. Maxwell's jaw tightened. She stole 10 years of our lives. And she'll fight dirty to avoid consequences, Sam warned. She's already called in favors. The judge who granted our emergency orders has been reassigned. The FBI agent leading the case is facing an internal review. A soft voice interrupted them. She's always been good at making problems disappear. Lily stood in the doorway looking younger in borrowed pajamas, her hair loose around her shoulders. Did she ever mention me? Maxwell asked gently. During those years? Lily joined them at the table. She said you were weak, that you collapsed after Mom died, couldn't handle raising me. Her eyes met his. I never fully believed her. There were inconsistencies in her stories, and I found things. Old photographs she thought she'd destroyed, letters she'd intercepted. Letters? Maxwell's heart quickened. From you to me. She'd kept them in a locked drawer in her study. I found them when I was 14. Lily's voice trembled. That's when I knew for certain she'd been lying. That's when I started planning. Those places in Benjamin's photographs, Sam said, understanding dawning. You were leaving a trail. Lily nodded. Grandmother would take me to the cottage twice a year, her idea of connecting me to my mother's heritage. I started leaving. Small things there, notes, clues. I didn't know about Benjamin or Hannah or Abigail, but I hoped someone would find them. Would find me. Maxwell reached for his daughter's hand. You're brilliant, you know that? Just like your mother. A small smile touched Lily's lips before fading. Grandmother will never stop, Dad. She believes we belong to her, her legacy, her bloodline. She's been grooming me to follow her into politics since I was 7. We'll handle Elizabeth, Sam assured her. Right now, your father has full legal custody of both you and Abigail. Elizabeth is facing serious federal charges. She has powerful friends, Lily insisted. So do we, Maxwell replied with quiet determination. Their conversation was interrupted by Hannah's entrance, her face pale. Turn on the news, she said urgently. The breaking story hit them like a physical blow. Elizabeth's driver had been found, dead in an apparent suicide, leaving a note claiming he had abducted Lily on his own initiative years ago, keeping the senator in the dark. That's impossible, Lily gasped. Martin has been with grandmother for decades. He would never— He didn't, Sam said grimly. This is Elizabeth creating a fall guy, making evidence disappear. Maxwell stood abruptly. We need to move, now. If she's willing to sacrifice her own driver, none of us are safe, Hannah finished, already heading toward the bedrooms to wake Abigail. Where can we go? Maxwell exchanged a look with Sam. The cottage. It's remote, defensible, and in my name only. Elizabeth would never expect us to go somewhere so obvious. Within the hour, they were packed and ready. As they headed for the door, Maxwell's phone rang, an unknown number. Don't answer it, Sam warned, but Maxwell already had the phone to his ear. There was silence on the line, then a woman's voice, not Elizabeth's, but vaguely familiar. Maxwell, it's Claire, Elizabeth's assistant. Listen carefully. She knows where you're going. She has people watching the cottage. Don't go there. The line went dead. Change of plans, Maxwell announced, pocketing his phone. We can't go to the cottage. Hannah clutched Abigail's hand tighter. Where then? We can't stay here. Sam moved to the window, discreetly checking the street below. We need somewhere Elizabeth wouldn't think to look. Somewhere with no connection to any of us. All eyes turned to Benjamin, who had been quietly loading camera equipment into his backpack. He looked up, feeling their gazes. What? he asked. Your studio, Hannah suggested. Elizabeth doesn't know about Benjamin's connection to all this. She'd have no reason to look for us there. Benjamin nodded slowly. It's not much, just a converted warehouse space I share with 2 other photographers, but there's a loft area where I sleep sometimes when working late. It's secure, keycard access only. It's perfect, Maxwell decided. We'll split up to be less conspicuous. Sam, you take Hannah and Abigail. Benjamin, you go separately. Lily and I will take the subway, less traceable than a car. Sam cleared his throat. Before we scatter, we need a communication protocol. No phones. They're too easily tracked. Instead, we use burner phones, 1 call only, then dispose of them. He produced several cheap prepaid phones from his bag. Old detective habit, always keep backups. They synchronized watches and agreed on check-in times, then headed out in different directions. Maxwell and Lily blended into the morning commuter crowd, both wearing nondescript clothing and sunglasses. Despite the tension, Maxwell felt a surge of pride watching his daughter navigate the city with calm efficiency. You move like someone used to being watched, he observed quietly as they changed subway lines. Lily gave a small, humorless smile. Living with grandmother meant always being on display. The perfect posture, the appropriate expression, the right words. She was grooming me to be her political heir. And yet you were planning your escape the whole time. Not the whole time, Lily admitted. For years I believed her. Believed I had no one else. Her voice caught slightly. When I found your letters, everything changed. It was like waking up from a very long dream. They emerged from the subway in an industrial area undergoing gentrification, old warehouses now housing art studios and tech startups. Benjamin's building was a red brick structure with large windows and a newly installed security system. Inside, the studio space was open and airy, with concrete floors and exposed beams. Photography equipment and backdrops occupied one section, while a small kitchenette and worn sofa suggested the practical aspects of a working studio. A metal staircase led to a loft area with a simple bed, bookshelves, and a desk. It's not much, Benjamin apologized as they arrived, but it's secure. Within an hour, Sam arrived with Hannah and Abigail, completing their group. The reunion was subdued but heartfelt, everyone aware of the precarious nature of their situation. While the others settled in, Sam and Maxwell huddled near the windows, speaking in low voices. We need to go on the offensive, Maxwell insisted. Elizabeth has too much power, too many connections. If we wait, she'll find a way to bury the truth and reclaim the girls. Sam nodded grimly. I've been thinking the same thing. She's creating a narrative where she's the caring grandmother and you're the unstable father. We need to counter that with irrefutable evidence. What kind of evidence? Elizabeth's records, financial transactions, travel documents, medical records for the girls. Anything that proves she orchestrated the kidnapping and maintained the deception for a decade. Maxwell frowned. Those would be in her private residence or office. Impossible to access. Not necessarily, Lily interjected, approaching them quietly. Grandmother keeps extensive records. She's obsessed with documentation, with controlling information. She hesitated. I know where she keeps her most sensitive files. Both men turned to her with surprise. In her Washington home, Lily continued, there's a hidden room behind her study, a panic room of sorts, but she uses it as a secure archive. I discovered it accidentally when I was 13. You're suggesting we break into a United States senator's home? Sam asked incredulously. I'm suggesting I break in, Lily corrected. I know the security codes, the patrol patterns of her staff, even which floorboards creak. I lived there for 10 years, remember? Maxwell shook his head firmly. Absolutely not. I just got you back. I'm not risking losing you again. Dad, Lily said gently. Grandmother is never going to stop, not unless we find something so damaging. She has no choice but to back down. I know her better than anyone. I know her vulnerabilities. Sam looked thoughtful. The girl has a point, Maxwell. Elizabeth wouldn't expect us to counterattack so directly, and with Lily's inside knowledge. It's too dangerous, Maxwell insisted. I won't be alone, Lily assured him. I'll need help. someone who knows technology who can copy her files quickly. She glanced toward Benjamin, who was showing Abigail how to use a professional camera. Someone like Benjamin. Maxwell looked between them, torn between his protective instincts and the recognition that his daughter was right. Elizabeth would never stop unless forced to. "We'll need a solid plan," he finally conceded. "Multiple contingencies, emergency extraction options. And a distraction," Sam added. "Something to ensure Elizabeth herself isn't at the residence when you make your move." Hannah, who had been listening silently, stepped forward. "I can help with that. If Elizabeth believes Abigail is being moved somewhere, she'll redirect her attention." "No," Maxwell and Lily said simultaneously. "Not Abigail," Hannah clarified. "A decoy. I have a friend with a daughter about Abigail's age and similar appearance, with the right clothes viewed from a distance." A plan began to take shape. Risky, complex, but with the potential to finally end Elizabeth's control over their lives. As they worked through the details, Maxwell watched his daughters together. Lily showing Abigail how to hold Benjamin's camera properly, their identical profiles silhouetted against the studio windows. After all these years, his family was together again. And he would do whatever necessary to keep it that way. The Washington townhouse loomed before them, elegant and imposing in the gentle glow of strategically placed landscape lighting. From their vantage point in the darkened car, Lily studied the familiar facade, her face a mask of determination. "Security patrol passes every 20 minutes, she murmured, checking her watch. "We have a 17-minute window after they leave." Benjamin nodded, adjusting the equipment bag on his lap. It contained not camera gear but specialized devices Sam had procured through connections he refused to name. "Are you sure about this?" Maxwell asked from the driver's seat, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. Lily met his eyes in the rearview mirror. "I've never been more sure of anything." 3 days of meticulous planning had led to this moment. Across town, Hannah and Sam were executing their part of the plan, creating a diversion that would keep Elizabeth's attention firmly elsewhere. They had leaked information about a potential witness coming forward, someone from the hospital where the twins were born, willing to testify about the falsified death certificate for the second baby. Maxwell checked his phone one last time. A text from Sam confirmed. Elizabeth had taken the bait and was currently at her lawyer's office preparing to counter this new threat. "It's time," Maxwell said quietly. "Remember, 15 minutes inside, then out. No matter what you find." Lily squeezed his shoulder gently. "We'll be careful, Dad." The word still felt new on her tongue, a precious reclamation of something stolen. She and Benjamin slipped from the car, moving with practiced precision across the manicured lawn and toward the service entrance. Maxwell would circle the block, returning exactly when needed for extraction. "Alarm code is Catherine's birthday," Lily whispered as they reached the door, entering the numbers with steady fingers. 81492. The small green light blinked and the door unlocked with a soft click. They were in. Lily moved through the darkened house with the confidence of long familiarity, Benjamin following close behind. The grand foyer, the formal dining room, the sunroom, all passed in a blur as she led them toward Elizabeth's private study. "Here," she said, stopping before an imposing oak door. Another keypad awaited them. "Different code," she explained, entering a longer sequence. "She changes it monthly, but always to variations of important political dates. Last time I checked, it was the date of her first Senate confirmation." The door swung open, revealing a meticulously organized study. Walls, lined with leather-bound books, a massive desk dominating the center of the room. Lily went straight to the far wall, running her fingers along the edge of a bookshelf. "The panic room is hidden behind this section," she explained, pressing a nearly invisible button beneath the third shelf. With a soft, hydraulic hiss, the bookcase slid aside, revealing a reinforced steel door. "That's impressive," Benjamin whispered. "Grandmother has many secrets," Lily replied grimly. "And this is where she keeps them all." She faced a final keypad, hesitating for the first time. This one's trickier. She changes it weekly. Can you guess it? I don't have to guess. She keeps a pattern. Lily's fingers hovered over the keypad. The last 4 digits of her most significant donor's account number. This week, that would be. She entered a sequence, holding her breath. The light remained red. She changed it, Lily murmured, tension creeping into her voice. She never changes the pattern. Benjamin unzipped his bag, removing a small electronic device. Let me try something. He attached it to the keypad, pressing several buttons. The device hummed softly, running through number combinations at incredible speed. How long will that take? Lily asked, glancing nervously at her watch. Depends on how many digits and... The light suddenly flashed green. Never mind, we're in. The panic room beyond was smaller than expected, clinically organized with filing cabinets, a computer workstation, and shelves of labeled storage boxes. Lily moved immediately to a cabinet marked Family Matters. This is it, she said, pulling open a drawer. Inside were folders meticulously labeled: Catherine's medical records, Lily's academic evaluations, property deeds, and finally, a thick folder labeled Contingency Plans. Lily handed it to Benjamin, who quickly began scanning and photographing each page with a handheld device. Meanwhile, Lily turned to the computer, inserting a USB drive Sam had provided. Her passwords were always variations of Winter's Legacy, Lily murmured, typing rapidly. With different number substitutions depending on the security level, the computer granted her access on the 3rd attempt. Files appeared, spreadsheets tracking payments to doctors, nurses, security personnel, email correspondence with private, investigators tasked with monitoring Maxwell's movements over the years. Most damning of all, documents detailing the elaborate cover-up of Abigail's existence. She planned everything, Lily whispered, her voice tight with anger. From the beginning, she even had contingency plans for if we ever found each other. We need to hurry, Benjamin reminded her, continuing to document everything they found. 7 minutes later, they had what they needed: irrefutable evidence of Elizabeth's decade-long deception. As they prepared to leave, Lily paused, her attention caught by a small safe tucked beneath the desk. Wait, she said, kneeling before it. There's one more thing. Lily, we're running out of time, Benjamin warned. This will only take a second. She dialed the combination, Catherine's birthday again, Elizabeth's lack of imagination when it came to personal matters always a weakness, and pulled open the door. Inside was a single item, a silver locket identical to the one Abigail had kept among her treasures. Lily's fingers trembled as she opened it, revealing a tiny photograph of Catherine holding 2 identical newborn girls. She kept this, Lily whispered. All these years she kept proof that there were 2 of us. A sudden noise from elsewhere in the house froze them both. Someone's here, Benjamin hissed. Lily quickly pocketed the locket and closed the safe. They sealed the panic room, reset the bookcase, and slipped from the study just as footsteps sounded in the hallway. This way, Lily mouthed, pulling Benjamin toward a servant's passage hidden behind a decorative panel. They crept through the narrow corridor as voices emerged behind them, Elizabeth's security team returning earlier than expected. They reached the kitchen just as flashlight beams appeared in the main hallway. The service door was only steps away, but now illuminated by security floodlights that had been remotely activated. We're trapped, Benjamin whispered. Lily's mind raced, the years of navigating Elizabeth's strict household revealing an alternative. Not yet. Follow me. She led him to the pantry, past shelves of imported goods, to where a small delivery entrance provided access for caterers during Elizabeth's frequent political functions. The door was alarmed, but Lily knew the override code. Within seconds they were outside, crouching behind hedges as security personnel converged on the main service entrance they'd used earlier. Maxwell was waiting at the rendezvous point, engine running. They slipped into the car, and he pulled, away calmly, maintaining a sedate pace to avoid attention. Did you get it? He asked once they were safely away from the neighborhood. Benjamin patted his bag. Everything. Payment records, falsified documents, Even emails discussing how to keep you from learning the truth. And this, Lily added, showing Maxwell the locket. Proof that she always knew there were two of us. That she deliberately separated twins and created the fiction that one had died. Maxwell's eyes misted as he glanced at the tiny photograph. You were both so small, he murmured. So perfect. As they drove toward the safe house where Sam and Hannah waited with Abigail, Lily felt a weight lifting from her shoulders. For the first time in 10 years, she was free of Elizabeth's shadow. The evidence they'd gathered would ensure her grandmother could never reclaim control over their lives. It's really over, isn't it? She asked softly. Maxwell reached back to squeeze her hand. Almost, sweetheart. Almost. The evidence against Elizabeth proved devastating. Within 48 hours of delivering the documents to federal prosecutors, a warrant was issued for the senator's arrest. The charges were extensive: kidnapping, falsification of government documents, witness tampering, and obstruction of justice. Maxwell and his daughters watched the news coverage from Sam's lakeside cabin, where they had relocated after the Washington operation. Elizabeth's arrest was the lead story on every network. The distinguished senator being escorted from her office, silver head held high, expression defiant, even as her carefully constructed world collapsed around her. I never thought I'd see the day, Lily murmured, her face a complex mixture of emotions. She always seemed untouchable. No one is above the law, Sam said, though his tone suggested even he was surprised by how quickly events had unfolded. The decisive evidence had been the financial records showing Elizabeth's systematic payments to hospital staff to falsify Abigail's death certificate, followed by the elaborate network of offshore accounts used to fund Hannah's care of the child while keeping her constantly moving. Most damning were Elizabeth's own written contingency plans detailing how she would respond if Maxwell ever discovered the truth, including strategies to have him declared mentally unfit. With Elizabeth in custody and denied bail as a flight risk, Maxwell finally felt safe enough to bring his daughters home to his Manhattan apartment. The transition wasn't simple. Lily, accustomed to Elizabeth's rigid structure and formal lifestyle, found Maxwell's more relaxed parenting approach both liberating and disorienting. Abigail, meanwhile, clung to Hannah, afraid that reuniting with her biological father and sister might somehow mean losing the only mother figure she'd ever known. She needs time, Hannah assured Maxwell one evening as they watched Abigail finally falling asleep after a day of heightened anxiety. Her whole world has changed. All our worlds have, Maxwell replied softly. That night, unable to sleep, Maxwell found Lily sitting by the window in the living room staring out at the city lights. You should be sleeping, he said gently. So should you, she countered with a small smile. Maxwell sat beside her. What's on your mind? Lily was quiet for a moment. I spent so long hating her, planning my escape, now that it's over. She hesitated. Part of me still feels like this can't be real, that she'll find a way to take it all back. She won't, Maxwell promised, taking her hand. Tomorrow the three of us are going to start building a new life. Together. 6 months later, the Thornwood gallery was once again filled with photographs, but now they told a different story. Benjamin's new exhibition, titled Reunited, chronicled the journey of a family torn apart and finally made whole again. Maxwell stood before a particularly striking image. Lily and Abigail sitting together on the cottage porch, their profiles mirrored against the setting sun. Despite the 10 years and vastly different upbringings that separated them, their connection was unmistakable, not just in their identical features, but in the way they leaned toward each other, instinctively, seeking the bond that had been denied them for so long. It's my favorite too, Hannah said, appearing beside him with 2 glasses of champagne. Maxwell accepted one gratefully. Thank you, for everything. Hannah smiled, her eyes drifting to where Abigail was enthusiastically explaining one of the photographs to an elderly couple. She's flourishing. They both are, Maxwell agreed, watching as Lily joined her sister, gently correcting some detail of the story with a laugh. The past 6 months had been a period of healing and adjustment. Elizabeth's trial had concluded with a 15-year sentence. her political connections insufficient to overcome the overwhelming evidence against her. The scandal had dominated news cycles for weeks before eventually fading, allowing the Reed family to rebuild their lives away from the public eye. Lily had struggled at first, the psychological effects of Elizabeth's manipulation running deeper than any of them had anticipated. She would wake in the night, convinced she was back in her grandmother's house, subject to her rigid rules and expectations. A skilled therapist had helped her navigate these issues, gradually replacing Elizabeth's controlling voice with her own. Abigail's journey had been different but equally challenging. While she embraced Maxwell with the open heart of a 9-year-old, she feared losing Hannah, the only constant in her nomadic life. It was Maxwell who had insisted Hannah remain a permanent part of their family, an arrangement that had evolved from awkward to natural as the months passed. "I never imagined this outcome," Hannah admitted quietly. "When I first took Abigail, I truly believed I was protecting her." "You were," Maxwell assured her. "Just not from me." Benjamin approached, camera in hand as always. "Family photo by the feature wall? The gallery owner wants it for the press release." They gathered before the central installation, a timeline of photographs showing fragments of their separated lives gradually converging. The final image showed all of them at the cottage, rebuilding what had been broken. As the camera clicked, Maxwell felt a profound sense of gratitude. His family would always bear the scars of their forced separation, but they had found their way back to each other, something that had seemed impossible for so long. Later that evening, after the gallery had emptied and they had returned home, Maxwell found Lily and Abigail in the living room, heads bent over a photo album. "What are you two plotting?" he asked, smiling at the conspiratorial way they looked up. "Not plotting, remembering," Lily explained, making room for him on the sofa. "I've been showing Abby the few photographs I managed to save from before. Everything." Maxwell sat between his daughters, looking down at images of a life interrupted. Catherine, holding infant Lily, Maxwell reading to her on the cottage porch, family picnics by the lighthouse. "I wish I remembered her," Abigail said softly, touching a photo of Catherine. "She would have loved watching you grow up," Maxwell assured her, his voice thick with emotion. "Both of you." "Do you think she somehow knows?" Lily asked. "That we found each other again?" Maxwell nodded, unable to speak for a moment. When he did, his voice was steady with conviction. "I know she does." As the evening deepened into night, the three of them continued talking, sharing stories, building bridges across the years that had been stolen from them. Hannah joined them later, bringing hot chocolate and adding her own perspective to their collective narrative. The journey wasn't over. There would be difficult days ahead as they continued healing from Elizabeth's manipulation. But sitting there, surrounded by the people he loved most in the world, Maxwell knew they would face whatever came together. The photographs on the walls around them were no longer clues to a mystery or markers of separation. Now they were simply memories, anchors in a shared history that, despite everything, had found its way back to wholeness. "We're home," Maxwell said quietly, his arms around his daughters. "All of us. Finally home." And in that moment, in the warm circle of their reunited family, the shadows of the past receded, leaving only the light of a future they would write together.